My name is Ava Marin. I was 18 when my future was taken from me, sealed in an envelope I was never meant to question. The day the letter arrived, the mailbox was already open. It was the middle of May, the kind of afternoon where everything smells like sun-warmed grass and pavement. I remember because I'd stood on the porch every day that week, waiting for it. I was wearing my Crestwood University hoodie, the one I'd bought even before my application was submitted. The letter was already sitting on the hallway table when I came in. My mother was in the kitchen, stirring soup that didn't need stirring. My father was watching something on TV, volume low. The envelope had already been sliced open. I hesitated, then picked it up. "We regret to inform you that we are unable to offer you admission at this time." My breath caught. My mom came in just a second too fast. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she said, already pulling me into a hug before I'd spoken. "Some dreams just take longer." My dad didn't say anything. He didn't even look away from the screen. I stood there, letter still in hand. I'd been ranked top 5 in my class. I had volunteer hours, a polished essay, a strong recommendation from my English teacher. I hadn't applied anywhere else, just Crestwood. It had always been Crestwood. The rejection felt unreal, like a scene that didn't belong to me. I asked if there was a mistake. My mom just shook her head slowly and said, "We'll find another way forward." She didn't offer options. She just meant staying home. That night, they brought it up casually over dinner, how Grandma Margot was struggling again, how we couldn't afford another in-home nurse, how it might be best if I stayed home just for a little while until we figured things out. "Family first," my mother said, as if that settled everything. My grandmother sat quietly across the table, chewing slowly. She didn't look sick, didn't act frail. She asked me later if I was okay. I said yes. She nodded, but I saw it in her eyes. Doubt. I told my best friend Jamie I hadn't gotten in. She cried harder than I did. She was going to Crestwood. I told her I was proud, that maybe I'd reapply next year. I didn't say I'd stopped believing that by the time the words left my mouth. Weeks passed, then months. The rejection became part of my story. My parents introduced me as the one who sacrificed for the family. They said it proudly, like I should be honored. I wasn't sure what I was anymore. Not a student, not a caregiver, really. Grandma didn't need much. She took her meds on time, did crosswords, watered the porch plants. She even brought me tea some nights when I came home from my shift at the diner. I worked the morning shift, wore a beige apron, memorized orders, called out plates. I started setting aside cash tips in a shoebox under my bed. It wasn't for anything in particular. I just needed to believe I still had something of my own. One night, after clearing dishes, I caught Grandma standing in the kitchen doorway. She was holding an old album. "I'm not dying," she said quietly. I looked up. "What?" She gave me a soft smile. "You think I need you here, don't you?" I didn't answer. She set the album down and walked away. The next morning, I saw my mother whispering sharply at her in the garden. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the glance, the warning. I went back to sweeping, but the silence had shifted. Something about it felt designed. We lived in a 3-bedroom house with a porch swing that hadn't moved in years. The cushions were sun-bleached and stiff. Everything about the house looked picture perfect if you didn't live in it. The kind of place that made people say things like, "So lucky to have family close." Lucky. Every morning I made scrambled eggs and toast for a woman who didn't need it. Grandma Margot would thank me, kiss my forehead, then go water the flowers herself. She read the paper cover to cover, played bridge online, could still drive if anyone let her, but they didn't, because fall risk sounded better than excuse. My parents had slotted me into a role that sounded noble: caretaker. "It's just for now," they repeated, "until we get some help." But no help ever came. No calls were made, no assessments scheduled. What bothered me most wasn't how they treated me. It was how they spoke about me, like I wasn't in the room. "She's finally useful," I overheard my mother say one afternoon on the phone in the laundry room. "And after that rejection, it's not like there's much else on the horizon." She said it flat. No malice, like she was talking about a blender. I leaned against the door frame, holding a basket of towels, staring at the linoleum. I didn't make a sound. Later, she complimented how neatly folded they were. I started sleeping less, waking up earlier than I needed to. I'd make coffee in the dark, just to hear my own thoughts. In the silence, something kept scratching at the edge of my mind. It wasn't just that I didn't belong in that house, it was the feeling that I hadn't failed, that the story they gave me, rejected, not ready, needed at home, was too convenient. I remembered how fast the letter had been opened, how quickly they'd consoled me, how quiet my dad had been. Too quiet. One afternoon, while cleaning the upstairs hall closet, I knocked over a pile of old shoe boxes. One burst open: birthday cards, pay stubs, school photos. Near the bottom was a file folder. Inside, I found a hospital invoice dated 8 years earlier, with Grandma's name on it. Follow-up care for a hip injury. That was it. No mention of chronic illness, no prescriptions, just one bill. Paid. I brought it downstairs. "Why was this with the winter coats?" I asked, holding it out. My mother didn't even look up from her tablet. "Oh, that? That's old." She's gotten worse since then. Grandma from the couch called out, "No, I haven't." My mom stood up, smiling too widely. "She forgets sometimes." "I don't forget anything," Grandma said. Her voice was clear, sharp. The next morning, the file was gone from the closet, and so were the shoe boxes. That night, I opened a blank notebook and wrote 4 words. "I think they lied." Not screamed, not sobbed, just documented. The drawer wasn't locked all the time. That was the mistake. It was part of my mother's bedroom set, old cherry wood, polished to a dull sheen. Top right, usually shut tight, sometimes with a small padlock, but not always. She'd get lazy, forgetful, or maybe she just never imagined I'd look. She still thought of me as the girl who cried when she lost her 6th grade spelling bee, not the girl who'd spend 4 months watching her own life disappear in plain sight. I waited for the right morning, the right mood, the right carelessness. It came on a Tuesday, just after lunch. She'd gone to run errands. Dad was at work. Grandma was napping, headphones in. I didn't even hesitate, just walked into her room and pulled open the drawer. At first glance, nothing dramatic. Manila folders, receipts, bank printouts. I moved fast but careful. Then I saw it. A plain white envelope with the Crestwood University logo in the top left corner. My name was printed on it, still sealed. It had never been opened. My chest went hollow. I peeled it open with shaking hands. "Dear Ava Marin, we are pleased to offer you admission to the class of 2020. It blurred. There it was. A full scholarship, dorm assignment, meal plan options, move-in checklist. Congratulations. Every detail I had imagined existed. Just not for me. Not because I wasn't accepted. Because they never told me. I sat down on the edge of the bed, letter in my lap, vision pulsing in and out. I read it twice, then a third time. The edges curled from how tightly I was holding it. I heard the car pull into the driveway. I stood, returned everything exactly as I'd found it. Except the letter. I kept it. My mom entered the house calling my name. I walked out of her bedroom before she saw me, sat at the dining table like nothing had happened. She came into the kitchen smiling like always, asked what I was up to. I looked at her, dead in the eye, and slid the open letter across the table. Her face didn't shift, not surprise, not shame, just a long, flat stare. She set her purse down. "It wouldn't have been good for you," she said. Calm, like a weather forecast. I didn't speak. "You would have struggled, or dropped out. Then blamed us anyway." Still, I said nothing. "Besides, it worked out. You're useful here. Grandma's stable, we're stable, you're needed." I looked at the letter once more, then folded it neatly, and left the room. That was the last conversation I ever had with her where I didn't lie. Because from that moment on, I became someone else. Someone she didn't recognize. Someone she didn't expect. Someone who was going to leave on her own terms and take everything with her that they thought they'd stolen. The next morning, I made everyone breakfast. Just like always. Scrambled eggs, toast, sliced apples in a chipped ceramic bowl. My mother complimented the seasoning. My father grunted something that sounded like agreement. Grandma gave me a long, quiet look across the table, then reached for her tea. No one mentioned the letter. I didn't either. Because I was done reacting. I had no plan yet. Just the understanding that I needed to disappear from the inside out. So I started small. I applied for a part-time job at a second diner under a different name, just weekends. I used my middle name and my grandmother's maiden name on the application. It worked. No one knew. I created a new email, a private number. Bought a $40 prepaid phone from a gas station 2 towns over. I hid it in the lining of a coat they never touched. Then I started teaching myself. Every night after dinner, once the dishes were done and the house fell into its quiet rituals, I turned on the old laptop my uncle had given me 3 birthdays ago. I didn't scroll, I didn't stream, I studied, free courses, PDFs, YouTube tutorials, digital design, e-commerce, branding. I watched lectures about how people built things from nothing. I took notes, practiced, failed, learned. My shoebox of tips grew heavier. I upgraded it to a locked cash tin, hid that too. 2 months in, I started selling custom quote prints online. Nothing fancy, just digital downloads. $3 a file. I sold 5 the first week, 12 the next. People liked the honesty in my words. Funny, the truth was only selling when I kept it far from home. Then came the envelope, not from a school, from Grandma. She handed it to me without a word one evening as we sat on the back steps, watching the neighbor's dog chase shadows. Inside was a check, $1,000, signed in her looping cursive. "Don't ask where it came from," she said. "Just don't waste it staying here." I asked if she knew. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached over and squeezed my hand like she used to when I was 10 and couldn't sleep after thunderstorms. The next day, I opened a separate bank account, one they couldn't access. Started using her money to order proper supplies, a printer, shipping labels, packaging materials. I rebranded my shop, designed a new logo, wrote new product copy. By the end of the month, I was clearing $500 a week. They didn't notice. They didn't ask why I was working longer shifts or why my phone stayed off during dinner. They were too comfortable. That was their weakness. They thought because I hadn't screamed, I hadn't moved. But I had, just not in the way they could see. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger fades, becomes ash. I was something colder than that. I was prepared. I moved out without a scene, no big announcement, no shouting match, no confrontation, just a simple text on a Wednesday afternoon. Staying with a friend for a while, don't wait up. I left behind my high school trophies, a few faded shirts, and a childhood that never got closure. I took the cash tin, the laptop, a duffel of clothes. my grandmother's check, deposited and quietly growing. I rented a studio in a part of town no one from our neighborhood visited, above a bookstore, 2 blocks from the bus stop. The walls were thin, the radiator screamed in winter, but it was mine. And still, they didn't come. Not the first day, not the first week, not the first month. My mother sent a single message, "Hope this phase passes quickly." That was it. I didn't answer, because I wasn't in a phase. I was in motion. The shop grew. The quote prints turned into physical journals, then into custom planners, then into full care kits. Notebooks, mugs, pins, all branded with one quiet theme: build without permission. Orders flooded in faster than I could fulfill. I hired a virtual assistant, outsourced production to a small batch manufacturer. I started waking up to sales notifications from places I'd never been. By year 2, I was running a full business. No loans, no debt, no degree, just the truth they buried, and the drive to unearth it on my own terms. I didn't post much on social media, but one quote went viral. "They told me I wasn't accepted. They were wrong, I just stopped asking." That post was shared by an author with 2 million followers. Then came the podcast requests, the business panel invitations, interviews for features about bootstrap entrepreneurs who defied odds. My face appeared on a local magazine cover under the headline, "Built from the ground up, the woman who never applied twice." That's when the email came. Not from my family, from Crestwood University. It was titled 2020X Freshman Orientation Keynote Invitation. They'd seen my work, followed my story, thought I could inspire new students to pursue non-traditional paths. Would I consider returning to campus as a speaker? I read it 3 times before moving, not because I was shocked, because it felt inevitable, a loop closing, a truth coming back around, publicly this time, the kind of spotlight my parents had never imagined I'd stand in. I accepted the invitation that night, and in my calendar I circled the date with a red pen. Not for nerves, for precision. The event was 3 weeks away. Crestwood sent over the itinerary, talking points, and a headshot request. I gave them everything they needed: clean, efficient, professional. I kept the bio short. Ava Marin is the founder and CEO of Marin & Company, a values-driven brand focused on independent growth and financial freedom. She is passionate about helping overlooked voices build their own success, regardless of permission. That last part wasn't just branding, it was the truth. I didn't tell my parents, not at first. I wanted the moment to land where it hurt most, unexpected, unplanned, uncontrollable. But then Crestwood made a post on their official page announcing the orientation speakers. My name was on the list, my photo, my quote. 2 hours later, my mother called. I didn't answer. She followed with a message. "We're so proud. We'll be there. Let us know what time it starts." No apology, no mention of the letter, no explanation for the years they took, just fake cheer, like they were riding shotgun on something they built. I didn't respond. I forwarded the guest RSVP link to Grandma instead. She replied within the hour. "Already picked out my outfit. They won't know what hit them." I smiled for the first time in days. I spent the week preparing in silence, not scripting every line, just deciding what I would and wouldn't protect. I wasn't going to rant, or accuse, or spiral into bitterness. I was going to say what happened in order with no tone, because the truth, undisturbed, is enough. The night before the event, I stayed in a hotel across town, slept with the speech printed and folded on the bedside table. I didn't dream. The next morning, I dressed like the person they never let exist. Structured blazer, clean lines, subtle heels, no apologies. I arrived 30 minutes early, walked the campus path I'd once imagined taking with a dorm key in hand. Instead, I walked it with security clearance and a name badge labeled Keynote. The auditorium was full before I stepped on stage. Parents, students, faculty, administrators, front row, two familiar faces, my mother in pearl earrings, my father holding a program like it was a church bulletin. They smiled when I walked in. I didn't smile back. I stood at the podium, adjusted the mic, looked out into the lights, and began. The podium was older than I expected, scuffed at the base, a faint chip on the left corner. The microphone gave a low hum when I touched it. The technician gave me a quick thumbs up from stage left. I waited. Let the room settle. Let the new freshmen, wide-eyed and caffeinated, shuffle into place. Let the parents, eager for reassurance, finish their small talk. Let the staff on the sidelines stop whispering over clipboards, and I let my parents find their seats. Front row, slightly right of center. My mother wore a powder blue blazer she reserved for church functions and mortgage signings. My father had on a dark jacket he hadn't buttoned. He held the program like it was a brochure for someone else's wedding. They were smiling, not with pride, with control, like they'd placed themselves in the narrative again, rewritten as supportive figures beaming at the daughter they always believed in. I waited 5 more seconds. Then I began. No quote, no banter, no warm preamble. When I was 17, I had a plan. I watched the words land. Familiar setup. They leaned in for a predictable story. Rejection, resilience, triumph. Something sanitized and shareable. Crestwood University. No safety schools. No backups. I put all my hopes into one envelope. Pause. The letter came in May. I didn't open it, because I didn't get the chance. My voice was level, flat, measured. It was already opened when I came home, sitting on the kitchen table. My mother said it was bad news. My father said it wasn't the end of the world. Their smiles flickered. I believed them. I told myself it was my fault. Maybe my essay wasn't strong enough. Maybe my scores weren't. Maybe I aimed too high. I looked out across the rows. So I didn't go. I stayed home. I took a job at a diner, and I took care of my grandmother, who didn't need taking care of. I didn't rush. I let the silence work. It always does. I watched my friends leave, move into dorms, pick out majors. I watched their lives open while mine closed. I held up the letter, the real one, worn at the folds. The paper had softened from being read too many times in the dark. I found this 2 years later, in a drawer I wasn't supposed to open. Murmurs. One sharp intake of breath from somewhere in the middle of the room. It wasn't a rejection. It was a full admission, scholarship, housing, welcome packet. I let that settle. My parents had hidden it. Never told me. Decided for me that college wasn't my path, that caregiving would be my role, that my potential was optional. The room was dead quiet now. A few phones tilted slightly, students recording. I didn't fight them, I didn't scream, I just left. I looked toward the students now, the ones with lanyards and notebooks and sticker-covered water bottles. I built something, quietly. I taught myself skills they said I didn't need. I launched a business from my bedroom while they were downstairs watching television, thinking I was folding laundry. Soft laughter, nervous, then understanding. Now I run a company that operates in 6 countries. We've helped over 100,000 customers. We create tools for people who were never given permission to start. Pause. People like me. I turned slightly, eyes drifting over the rows until I knew, without looking directly, that my mother's face had hardened. My father's foot tapped once, then stopped. This school invited me here today to talk about resilience, but I don't believe in resilience without truth, so here it is. I rested the letter on the podium. Some of you were waitlisted, some rejected, some accepted with strings attached. But if no one's told you that you deserve to be here, I will. I narrowed my voice, not softer, but sharper. You don't need anyone's permission to be ready. You don't need anyone's approval to be extraordinary. And if someone stole your beginning, you still get to write the ending. Silence again. Then a sound. It wasn't clapping, not yet. It was the scrape of a chair leg. Then another. My parents were standing. My mother's face was unreadable. My father's lips pressed tight into a line I used to think meant patience. Now I knew it meant fear. They turned and walked up the aisle. They left before the applause began, because when the first claps echoed from the back of the room, they grew, row by row, hands meeting in waves, and none of them belonged to the two people who had tried to script my silence. I didn't bow, I didn't wave, I just stood there, letting it echo. The applause didn't stop, not immediately. It rolled like a slow tide, uneven, unsure, then caught its rhythm. Some students stood, a few staff members followed. A photographer near the front clicked through an entire roll. I didn't stay for the Q&A. I left the stage the same way I came in, measured steps, spine straight, not once looking toward the door where my parents had vanished. Backstage, a young event coordinator tried to hand me water. I thanked her but didn't take it. My hands weren't shaking. I checked my phone. One message. From my mother. That was cruel. Unnecessary. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. I don't know what you think this proves. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have the words. Because she'd already heard them. All of them. On stage, into a microphone, in front of 1,000 strangers and no longer under her control. She didn't get to silence me now. By evening, the speech was online, clipped, captioned, shared. Someone had streamed the whole thing on TikTok. It spread. A user stitched it with, "This is how you end generational gaslighting." The video hit 400K views overnight. A local news site picked up the story. Then an education-focused podcast reached out. Then a youth advocacy foundation. The headline they used, "She was told she was rejected. Now she teaches others how to reclaim what was stolen." It wasn't just about me anymore. Emails came in from people I didn't know. Girls who'd been told to stay home for siblings, boys whose parents edited their college essays into something lifeless, first-generation students whose applications never got submitted. I started forwarding them into a folder. Subject, "They said I couldn't." Subject, "I believed them." Subject, "How did you know?" Some of them wrote paragraphs, some just sent one sentence, but all of them understood the feeling. Being told your potential was negotiable. The next message from my mother came 3 days later. "Your grandmother is very upset. She doesn't understand why you'd drag family matters into something public. You've always had a flair for dramatics. Just come home and explain." Again, I didn't respond. Because Grandma wasn't upset. She was with me. I'd picked her up the morning after the speech. She sat in the passenger seat with a tote bag and a folder of her crossword books. She hadn't asked for permission. Just opened the front door and said, "You ready?" Now, she lived in the guest room of my new place, a cottage with a fenced garden and a lemon tree she'd already named Winston. She brewed her tea every morning, watched baking shows, texted me emoji strings that made no sense. "You didn't humiliate them," she said one evening. "You freed yourself. That's different." I asked her if she ever knew about the letter. She paused. "I suspected, but I wasn't brave enough to ask. I'm sorry for that." I told her she didn't owe me an apology. She said, "Then let's just call it even." Later that month, I received another email from Crestwood. They wanted to offer me an honorary degree for contributions to student empowerment and educational equity. I accepted, not because I needed the piece of paper, but because I earned what it represented. This time, I didn't let my parents know. They'd already heard everything they needed to, and I had no intention of letting them stand beside me in any photo they didn't help develop. I had the letter framed, the real one, the acceptance they hid. It hangs in my office, low on the wall behind my desk, out of sight unless you know to look. Above it, a photo of me at the podium. Below it, a plaque. They buried my beginning. I built the ending. That's all it says. But it's enough. The foundation launched fast, unopened, a fund for students sabotaged by the people closest to them. No essays, no interviews, just proof and a way out. We got thousands of stories, all of them different, all of them the same. My mother emailed again, said she was ready to talk. Still no mention of what she did. I didn't reply. My father sent a card, a check. I mailed it back, along with a printed copy of the letter. No message, just the truth. Grandma's still with me. She gardens. She gives advice to students outside my office like it's her job. They call her Miss Margot. She always says the same thing before they leave. You didn't lose your shot. You just didn't let them take your second one. There was no final confrontation, no blowout argument, no apology I forced out of them. I didn't need one. That's the thing about clarity. It makes closure optional. They chose silence, so I made it permanent. I still get messages from girls like me. Some just say, "Thank you." Others ask, "How did you know it was a lie?" The answer is simple. You don't always know. Sometimes you just stop believing them when they say it was for your own good. I built a life in the space they tried to seal off, brick by brick, word by word, not to prove them wrong, but to prove me right. At the next Crestwood orientation, I returned, not to speak, just to watch. A student recognized me, asked if I'd ever go back, enroll, take a class, earn the degree. I told her no, because I'd already passed the only test that mattered, starting without permission. That night, I sat on the porch with Grandma. She made tea. I watched the lights across the street blink off one by one. She leaned over and said, "They gave you a no, but you made a future out of it anyway." I smiled, not because it was sweet, because it was true. They faked my rejection. So I rewrote the ending, and this time, I opened the letter myself.